McLaren launched the MCL 38 this week. They did some renders. They did a live event, and we got a little look at the car. I just want to start first with the aims that McLaren might have for this season. So McLaren ended last season really well. They were probably on pace, the second quickest car to Red Bull across the final third of the season, which is huge considering where they started the season. So what are their aims for 2024? I think they need to demonstrate that the trajectory of the second half of last year can be sustained, and given that that trajectory was based on a new structure, both in terms of hardware, so they've got a new driver and loop simulator, they've got a brand spanking new Windtunnel, but also from a personnel point of view, they've got their three technical heads, and now they've got David Sanchez and Rob Marshall in there as well. They need to demonstrate that is going to work. That's important not just to McLaren, it's important to me because, as we've said before, there has to be a model where Adrian Newey's singular genius is able to be distilled into more than one person, because that one person doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form anymore. So McLaren are giving us a way to do that, and it'll be interesting to see whether this format for McLaren works. And in terms of the car itself, I think they need to know that the car is responsive to upgrades and that there's a good correlation with the new wind tunnel. And we're not really going to know that until they hit the track, but that's what they need to do. And I think they probably need to improve the drivability of the car as well. Lando was talking about the fact that even at the end of the season last season, although the car was performing well, he still wasn't particularly comfortable driving it. He talked about having to alter his driving style to fit with the car and not really being able to drive it the way he wanted to. So that's where I think that those are the things that I think McLaren need to do. I'm going to come to you, Ammar. What did you think of the car when you looked at it? What did you think of the launch, the livery, the overall appearance?
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
I think the MCL 38 does look really good. I think that with everything that you said about the technical additions, and just sort of looking at the car, the ability for it to respond to upgrades, drivability, I think, yeah, you said it right. The drivability thing was the biggest thing that we had heard across the board towards last season, right? But McLaren did show a lot of promise, right? After a torrid start to the season last year, they came on much better than anyone else. And in fact, we've talked about how they seem like they are primely positioned to build on what they did last year and really be at it with Red Bull. And some of the rhetoric, some of the talk coming out of McLaren has been that they can see themselves challenging for Red Bull. Of course, everyone thinks that, but they have shown, right? I mean, the Qatar sprint was one example of that. There were other times throughout the year, even at Silverstone for a few laps, at least initially, and perhaps in the right conditions, with a little bit of help of the weather or whatnot, they might be right there with Red Bull. So I
Yeah.
think that this would be my team, and this particular car would be one I would have the biggest hope with, given what we've seen they do last year, and then really, added everything in there. The launch itself was great, but I think the potential really lies in the car, and we'll see it when it hits the track in Bahrain. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is one of the most important car launches we're seeing this season, which is why we're talking about it, because they have the potential to be absolutely right up there, really snapping at Red Bull's heels. And Red Bull probably need to be worried about what McLaren have come up with. In terms of what they showed, McLaren didn't really show very much, and actually both the renders and the photos of the car, they shadowed out quite a lot of important things. For me, that tells you quite a lot. So Andrea Stella, he was quoted at the launch as saying, I'll read out the quote. He said, "There are a number of innovations on the car, but not all of the areas we wanted to address have been completed for our launch spec car. And those areas now become the focus of our in-season development." That tells me two things. Now, you can take that as again, McLaren aren't ready and they haven't been able to reach their targets. But I would take that slightly differently. I would say that there's one, a bit of a confidence in the team that they don't want to release some of the stuff that they've got in their car because they know that it's performance enhancing, right? They've got stuff on their car that's innovative that they are proud of, and they are confident is going to make their car faster than their competition. So for me, that speaks of some confidence in the within the camp,
Yeah.
but also the idea that this isn't a you bring your car to the launch and that's it. Your car needs to be able to respond to upgrades. It's what sunk Aston Martin last season, that they had a car that started off really well, but they didn't understand how to bring performance to it, and they dropped off because their upgrades didn't do anything. And in fact, they took the car backwards. Um, so so it's good news for McLaren, and it's big talk from them if they are saying that they've got a launch spec, but they've also got potential for upgrades. That will also give us an idea of how good their correlation is between their new wind tunnel and the track. Go on.
Yeah, no,
Yours first.
absolutely. No, I agree with you. I was going to say that we've always seen a little bit of sportsmanship with these car launches, right? There often is a little bit hidden. There's a lot that has not been brought to the fore yet. There's a lot of, like, cat and mouse games with these things, if you will. And I think the McLaren project is so interesting, right? Not only because they brought who they brought in from Red Bull, right? And we've talked about this in the past, but in reality, if you look around the grid, right, they're the only ones that are well positioned to beat Red Bull, not just based on what they did last year, but you look at where Mercedes and Ferrari are. They're in a sort of a transitionary period with the Lewis Hamilton news, and there's going to be some impact of that. It's hard to estimate what that would look like, but naturally, you have two drivers going out into their last season, right? There's an impact of that. The development pace might not be what it might be if you have those drivers locked up for the foreseeable future, all of which McLaren really has, right? And then on top of it, they appear to have a structure with Zach Brown at the helm. The three guys that we've talked about going after Adrian Newey, they have a lot of what appears to be Red Bull's concepts, and they probably know a little bit about where Adrian was going with the car, at least as of, a few months ago. So
I mean, some of it is quite interesting though. Like,
yeah.
that what they did, what you could see that we're gonna talk about side pods, I'm sure, for the rest of this video, but they've actually done what Red Bull did, and they obviously came up with this themselves. They last season they were following
Philosophy.
Red Bull's philosophy with that underbite, sorry, overbite,
Or
with
bike.
the bottom lip of the side pod protruding, and then a small letterbox aperture. And what they've done now is flip that on its head, and we're going to talk about what Red Bull have done shortly. But they've gone for the overbite. So now you've got the side impact structure on the side of the car. Um, we think incorporated into the side pod structure in the same way that Mercedes had been doing for the past 2 seasons. It's interesting that happens. That's quite a cool little innovation that they've got there. And there's a few other bits and pieces going backwards towards the rear of the car. But I mean, I go back to the fact that they really haven't shown us very much of the properly performance enhancing areas of the car, and it's a stark difference from last season where they were happy to show us everything and be very clear that we haven't hit our targets. We think our car's going to do badly, and then it did. But this year they've clearly got something to hide, and that shows an inner confidence in the team that I'm excited to see translate into something on the track.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see what testing looks like, and then of course what that first race will bring. It'll tell us a lot. And no, I'm not expecting them to beat Red Bull out of the gate, but I'm really looking to see them be right there. And of course, with the first couple of races in the season, there's a lot happening. There are things that happen out of the ordinary. We've seen that happen in 22. You never know, but I think that they really do. They're building on what they've done, right? Versus what some of the other teams are doing, which is kind of a bit of a reset. So I think they definitely have all the advantages baked in, and certainly cannot wait to see what they're doing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great. That's great then.